Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 559th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Sindbad the seaman continued. So I left the city of the apes and embarked on coconuts and what else I possessed. We weighed anchor the same day and sailed from island to island and sea to sea, and whenever we stopped I sold and traded my cocoa nuts, and the Lord requited me more than I erst had and I had lost. Amongst other places we went to an island abounding in cloves and cinnamon and pepper, and the country folk told me that by side of each pepper bunch groweth a great leaf, which shadeth from the sun, and casteth the water off in the wet season. But when the rain ceaseth, the leaf turneth over and droopeth down by the side of the bunch. Here I took in great store of pepper and cloves and cinnamon in exchange for coconuts, and we passed thence to the island of Al Yerserat, whence cometh the Comoran aloes wood, and thence to another island, 5 days' journey in length, where grows the Chinese lind aloes, which is better than the Comoran. But the people of this island are fouler of condition and religion than those of the other, for that they love fornication and wine-bibbing, and know not prayer nor call to prayer. Thence we came to the pearl fisheries, and I gave the divers some of my coconuts, and said to them, "Dive for my luck and lot." They did so, and brought up the deep bite great store of large and priceless pearls. And they said to me, "By Allah, O my master, thy luck is lucky." Then we sailed on with the blessings of Allah, whose name be exalted, and ceased not sailing till we arrived safely at Basra. There I abode a little while, and went on to Baghdad, when I entered my quarter and found my house, and foregathered with my family, and saluted my friends, who gave me joy of my safe return. And I laid up all my goods and valuables in my storehouses. Then I distributed alms and largesse, and clothed the widow and the orphan, and made presents to my relations and comrades, for the Lord had requited me fourfold that I had lost. After which I returned to my old merry way of life, and forgot all I had suffered in the great profit and gain I had made. Such, then, is the history of my 5th voyage and its wonderments. Now to supper, and tomorrow come again, and I will tell you what befell me on my 6th journey, for it was still more wonderful than this, saith he who telleth the tale. Then he called for food, and the servants spread the table, and when they had eaten the evening meal, he bade give Sinbad the porter 100 golden dinars, and the landsman returned home, and lay down to sleep, much marvelling at all he had heard. Next morning, as soon as it was light, he prayed the dawn prayer, and after blessing Mohammed, the cream of all creatures, betook himself to the house of Sindbad the seaman, and wished him a good day. The merchant bade him sit and talked with him till the rest of the company arrived. Then the servant spread the table, and when they had well eaten and drunken, and were mirth-filled and merry, Sinbad the seaman began in these words the narrative of the 6th voyage of Sinbad the seaman. Know, O my brothers and friends and companions, all that abode some time after my return from my 5th voyage, in great solace and satisfaction, and mirth and merriment, joyance and enjoyment, and I forgot what I had suffered, seeing the great gain and profit I had made, till I sat making merry and enjoying myself with friends, and there came into me a company of merchants, whose case told tales of travel, and talked to me of voyage and adventure, and greatness of pelf and lucre. Hereupon I remembered the days of my return from abroad, and my joy at once more seeing my native land, and foregathering with my family and friends, and my soul yearned for travel and traffic. So, compelled by fate and fortune, I resolved to undertake another voyage, and buying me fine and costly merchandise met for foreign trade, made it up into bales, with which I journeyed from Baghdad to Basra. Here I found a great ship ready for sea, and full of merchants and notables, who had with them goods of price. So I embarked my bales therein, and we left Basra in safety and good spirits, and under the safeguard of the king of the preserver. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, When it was the 560th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Sinbad the sailor continued. And after embarking my bales and leaving Basra in safety and good spirits, we continued on our voyage from place to place, from city to city, buying and selling and profiting, and diverting ourselves with the sight of countries where strange folk dwell. And fortune in the voyage smiled upon us, till one day, as we went along, behold, the captain suddenly cried with a great cry, and cast his turban on the deck. Then he buffeted his face like a woman, and plucked out his beard, and fell down in the waist of the ship, while nigh fainting for stress of grief and rage, and crying, 'Oh, and alas for the ruin of my house and the orphanship of my poor children!' So all the merchants and sailors came round about him, and asked him, 'O master, what is the matter?' For the light had become night before their sight. And he answered, saying, 'Know, O folk, that we have wandered from our course, and left the sea, whose way we wot, and come into the sea, whose ways I know not. And unless Allah vouchsafe us a means of escape, we are all dead men. Wherefore pray ye to the Most High, that he deliver us from this strait. Happily amongst you is one righteous, whose prayers the Lord will accept.' Then he rose and clomb the mast to see, and there were any escape from this strait, and he would have loosed the sails. But the wind, it redoubled upon the ship, and whirled her round thrice, and drove her backwards, whereupon her rudder brake, and she fell off towards a high mountain. With this the captain came down from the mast, saying, 'There is no majesty, and there is no might, save in Allah, the glorious, the great. Nor can man prevent that which is foreordained of fate. By Allah, we are fallen on a place of sure destruction, and there is no way to escape for us, nor can any of us be saved.' Then we all fell weeping over ourselves, and bidding one another farewell, for that our days were come to an end, and we had lost all hopes of life. Presently the ship struck the mountain and broke up, and all and everything on board were plunged into the sea. Some of the merchants were drowned, and others made shift to reach the shore and save themselves upon the mountain. I amongst the number, and when we got ashore, we found a great island, or rather a peninsula, whose base was strewn with wreckage of crafts and goods and gear casts up by the sea from broken ships, whose passengers had been drowned. And the quantity confounded Compton calculation. So I climbed the cliffs into the inward of the isle, and walked on inland till I came to a stream of sweet water that welled up at the nearest foot of the mountain, and disappeared in the earth under the range of hills on the opposite side. But on all the other passengers went over the mountains to the inner tracks, and dispersing hither and thither, were confounded at what they saw, and became like madmen at the sight of the wealth and treasures wherewith the shores were strewn. As for me, I looked into the bed of the stream aforesaid, and saw therein great plenty of rubies, and great royal pearls, and all kinds of jewels and precious stones, which were as gravel in the bed of the rivulets that ran through the fields, and sands sparkled and glittered with gems and precious ores. Moreover, we found in the island abundance of the finest lin aloes, both Chinese and Comoran, and there also is a spring of crude ambergris, which flowereth like wax or gum over the stream banks for the great heat of the sun, and runneth down to the seashore, where the monsters of the deep come up, and swallowing it, return into the sea. But it burneth in their bellies, so they cast it up again, and it congealeth on the surface of the water, whereby the colour and quantities are changed. And at last the waves cast it ashore, and the travellers and merchants who know it collect it and sell it. But as for the raw ambergris, which has not swallowed it, floweth over the channel, and congealeth on the banks, and when the sun shineth on it, it melteth, and sendeth the whole valley with a musk-like fragrance. Then, when the sun ceases from it, it congealeth again. But none can get to this place where is the crude ambergris, because of the mountains which enclose the island on all sides, and which foot of man cannot ascend. We continued thus to explore the island. marveling at the wonderful works of Allah and the riches we found there, but sore trouble for our own case, and dismayed at our prospects. Now, we had picked up on the beach some small matter of victuals from the wreck, and husbanded it carefully, eating but once every day or two, in our fear lest it should fail us and we die miserably of famine and affright. Moreover, we were weak for colic brought on by seasickness and low diet, and my companions deceased, one after another, till there was but a small company of us left. Each that died we washed and shrouded in some of the clothes and linen cast ashore by the tides, and after a little the rest of my fellows perished, one by one, till I had buried the last of the party, and abode alone on the island, with but a little provision left, I, who was wont to have so much. And I wept over myself, saying, Would heaven I had died before my companions, and had they not washed me up and buried me! It had been better than I should perish, and none wash me and shroud me and bury me. But there is no majesty, and there is no might, save in Allah, the glorious, the great. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 561st night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Sinbad the seaman continued in these words. Now, after I had buried the last of my party and abode alone on the island, I arose and dug me a deep grave on the seashore, saying to myself, Whenas I grow weak and know that death cometh to me, I will cast myself into the grave and die there, so the wind may drift the sand over me and cover me, and I be buried therein. Then I fell to reproaching myself for my little wit in leaving my native land and betaking me again to travel. After all, I had suffered during my first 5 voyages, and when I had made not a single one without suffering more horrible perils and more terrible hardships than in its forerunner, and having no hope of escape from my present stress. And I repented me of my folly, and bemoaned myself, especially as I had no need of money, seeing that I had enough and more than enough, and could not spend what I had, no, not even half of it in all my lifetime. However, after a while, Allah sent me a thought, and I said to myself, By God, needs must this stream have an end as well as a beginning. Ergo an issue somewhere, and belike its course may lead to some inhabited place. So my best plan is to make me a little boat, big enough to sit in, and carry it in launching it on the river, and bank thereon, and drop down the stream. If I escape by God's leave, and if I perish, better die in the river than here. Then, sighing to myself, I set to work collecting a number of pieces of Chinese and Cormoran aloes wood, and I bound them together with rope from the wreckage. Then I chose out from the broken-up ship straight planks of even size, and fixed them firmly upon the aloes wood, making me a boat raft a little narrower than the stream of the channel, and I tied it tightly and firmly as though it were nailed. Then I loaded it with goods, precious ores and jewels, and the union pearls, which were like gravel, and the best of the ambergris, crude and pure, together with what I had collected on the island, and what was left me of a victual and wild herbs. And lastly, I lashed a piece of wood on either side to serve me as oars, and I launched it, and embarking, did according to the saying of the poet, Fly, fly with life when as evil threats. Leave the house to tell of its builder's fate. Land after land shalt thou seek and find, but no other life on thy wish shall wait. Fret not thy soul and thy thoughts, O night, all woes shall end or sooner or late. Whoso is born in one land to die, there and only there shall gang his gate. Nor trust great things to any weight. Soul hath only soul for confederate. My boat raft drifted with the stream. I pondering the issue of my affair, and drifting ceased not till I came to the place where it disappeared beneath the mountain. I rowed my conveyance into the place, which was intensely dark, and the current carried the raft with it down the underground channel. The thin stream bore me on through a narrow tunnel where the raft touched either side, and my head rubbed against the roof, return therefrom being impossible. Then I blamed myself for having thus risked my life, and said, if this passage grow any straighter, the raft will hardly pass, and I cannot turn back, so I will inevitably perish miserably in this place. And I threw myself down upon my face on the raft, by reason of the narrowness of the channel, whilst the stream ceased not to carry me along, knowing not night from day, for the excess of the gloom which encompassed me, and about my terror and concern for myself, lest I should perish. And in such conditions my course continued down the channel, which now grew wider and then straighter, till sore aweary by reason of the darkness which could be felt, I fell asleep, as I lay prone on the raft, and I slept, not knowing any about the time, were it long or short. When I awoke at last, I found myself in the light of heaven, and opening my eyes, I saw myself in a broad of the stream, and the raft moored to an island in the midst of a number of Indians and Abyssinians. As soon as these blackamoors saw that I was awake, they came up to me and bespoke me in their speech. But I understood them not. What they said and thought that was a dream and a vision which had betided me for stress of concern and chagrin. But I was delighted at my escape from the river. When they saw I understood them not, and made them no answer, one of them came forward and said to me in Arabic, Peace be with thee, O my brother. Who art thou, and whence fared thou hither? How camest thou into this river, and what manner of land lies beyond yonder mountains? For never knew we any one who made his way thence to us. Quoth I, And upon thee be peace, and the ruth of Allah and his blessings. Who are you, and what country is this? O my brother, answered he, we are husbandmen and tillers of the soil, who came out to the water our fields and plantations, and finding thee asleep on this raft, laid hold of it, and made it fast by us, against thou should wake at thy leisure. So tell us, how camest thou hither? I answered, For Allah's sake, O my lord, ere I speak, give me somewhat to eat, for I am starving, and after ask me what thou wilt. So he hastened to fetch me food, and I ate my fill till I was refreshed, and my fear was calmed by a good bellyful, and my life returned to me. Then I rendered thanks to the Most High for mercies great and small, glad to be out of the river, and rejoicing to be amongst them. And I told them all my adventures, from first to last, especially my troubles in the narrow channel. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. And so do I cease the telling of my tales until it be morrow.